Here. Good morning. Oh, hi. You got the wrong... Yep, okay. So, the great orc with magic-resistant armor made of great wind is a wizard with a wish. Yes, if you resurrected the great worm, okay, if you resurrected the great worm, then the great orc would be inside of it, which means it would be consumed, so the wizard wins. Is that right? Thanks for joining in. This is, once again, Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons, and I have to apologize for the unpredictability of when this is happening. But as summer has gone on, we've had all sorts of travel now and then, and family things now and then, and yeah, so when this happens is a little bit unpredictable, and it probably will be right through the end of the year. But today we are doing Submarine Wednesday, and I plan also to be doing a painting stream on Friday from more or less 10 until more or less 2. And maybe on Monday, I am not sure yet, so you might want to check in to see if that happens or not, or at least check it out on YouTube and see if there's an episode posted. But right now, I am actually going to do a real painting stream of Submarine Wednesday, and I'll be doing some painting and some gluing. And then on Friday, I'm not sure. I've got a bunch of minifigs here that I can work on, some imps and this thing that looks really scary. That might be kind of interesting to paint. Could do some things with the wings. That should be fun. And I've also got, I haven't primed them yet, but there's some like a centaur. Looks good. That might be interesting if I can clean up the mouth without hurting anything. And if I feel like painting something large, this is definitely large. But today I am continuing to work on the submarine after having made a significant breakthrough two streams ago when I got, believe it or not, all of this stuff inserted into the submarine. Completed step 5, except for this ladder, and I have to figure out where this ladder goes. Somewhere up here it goes up to this escape hatch somehow. There's no real slot for it or anything, so I might play with that a little bit later, but for now I'm moving on to the missile deck. And the missile deck is all of step 6 of, let's see how many steps there are. 6 of 9. Oh, cool. Yeah, so the next one I do, the reactor deck, will be 7 of 9. That will be an event, doing 7 of 9. So I am without coffee this morning, so things are going to be very slow, even slower than usual. I think maybe I'm not really trusted with coffee since I spilled that mug of it a couple of streams ago. Well, I didn't do it on the stream. I did it just before the stream started, which was why the stream was late that day, because it was a full custom Dice and Dungeons mug full of coffee with cream. That was not the smoothest day. So, what I've got for the missile room, the missile deck here, is I've got all these parts. And the tubes, the missile tubes themselves, the 16 of them need to be assembled. They need to be cemented together, and I'll do that today. And probably after the break, because they need to set for a while, and then they need to be sanded and primed. Except for this one is a special one with a little spring and a lever, and a missile goes into that. And if all the hatches are open, which are they're supposed to somehow be that way, it'll actually, that little spring will push the little missile up, and it'll pop above the top of the submarine by a couple of inches, which is why the box says that it actually fires, in quotes, fires a missile. But yeah, the painting scheme on this, these are the parts. Here we are. There's some small parts here that need to be painted as well. These bits, these machinery bits. But the decks are pretty straightforward. The very, very bottom deck is painted dark gray on the bottom to match the hull color. And I'm going to be painting, these floors are supposed to be gray, and actually this primer is a really good gray, but yeah, I don't know. It's really tempting. It's just tempting to just leave it that color, you know? But I probably won't. I will paint it a light gray color just to make sure it's covered well. And then there are these raised things here. I'm going to do that with a, let's see what color they're supposed to be. I'm going to get a box top here. I have to look at the color scheme. Be right back. This shows you what I'm working on. This is the part that's done here. Yeah, and this is the part I'm working on. So it's mainly yellow. Yeah, these decks are really dark gray in the picture, but I'm going to make them light gray so that there's a contrast with the hull color. Okay, so these floors are going to be a light gray. There's some control panels down here on the bottom. It's pretty funny. So yeah, they show up here, but they don't really exist. They exist here. And there, that's that control panel. So I'll be, painting that a base color. The walls of the deck are this same light blue color that is used way up here in the galley. And all of the stuff here in the mid deck is painted this kind of bone white color that's used for the torpedo racks and tubes for the periscopes. Yeah, anyway, just checking on these things. So this bottom deck doesn't have this outliney stuff, even though it shows up here. Supposed to be that bone white color. I might try to paint that in. I don't know. It might be kind of a challenge, but I might give it a try. Well, what I'm going to do is paint the bottom of this deck first, and because the painting the top later. Let's see. Light gray, light gray, light gray. The bottom of this is dark gray, so I'll paint that first. And then probably start on this bulkhead here. And that bulkhead goes here like this. There's a control panel down here. You got your hatches, you got your fire extinguishers, kind of oh, there's a clock on the wall. That's cool. The top here is painted dark gray, and then the back of this, the whole back of it, is painted dark gray. That's the reactor room. So this is dark gray. This is dark gray. Whole thing. This is the bulkhead back here. So these three things are all painted dark gray, as is this. This goes in the back of the reactor room. Kind of I'm not sure what it does exactly, but there it is. So these three things are painted dark gray, and that's good to know, because then I can just go ahead and do that. Use a big brush and try to get it nice and even. Let's see, the hatchways are all painted light gray, and the fire extinguishers are red. And historically, I have, that is to say, in the past, I've painted those bits first, and then lightly painted around them. Okay. Carefully painted around them. And yeah, why is everything? Oh, okay. Hi, new follower. Sorry, things are a little bit ragged this morning. I haven't done this in a while, and yeah. And I'm trying to catch up with myself, trying to remember what I was doing. What I am doing is building this submarine and checking out what color things are. So these parts that I pulled out here are all painted the basic hull color. These are the bulkheads that face the reactor room, which is a pretty cool thing once I get around to doing that eventually. And this is the bottom of the deck. Oh, yes, it is a historical submarine. That's right, Submarine Wednesday. Now let me explain about Dyson Dungeons as I get out the dark gray paint, if I can find it. The Dyson Dungeons is a group of people who play Dungeons and Dragons. And we stream that 3 Sundays a month on with a live chat at 2 Eastern Daylight Time, soon to be Eastern Standard Time again, I guess. And I started out painting minifigs and dungeon tiles. I'll show some dungeon tiles a little bit later. But one Wednesday, I ran out of things to paint for the stream. And so I've got a whole lot of, an embarrassing number of old models laying around that I was planning to start and work on when I retired, but I got busy doing other things instead of building models. And so pulled this out. This is a 1960s vintage kit. Okay, this kit is actually from the 1960s, and it's the prototype of the ballistic missile launching submarine. This was the very first ballistic missile launcher. There's one there going off to kill a city somewhere. And I built this when I was like in 7th grade. Okay, I didn't do it in nearly as much detail. I just kind of slapped it together over a period of 2 weeks, as opposed to what is now turning out to be something like 2 years. Yeah, so I thought, well, I'll just start this because I've got the kit. I bought this so that I could, reminisce about being in grade school, I guess. So that's how Submarine Wednesday started. And those kits, I had ended up actually buying 3 of them, because with these old kits, parts are missing or parts are broken or painted. Oh, cool. Yeah. On Friday, I'll be getting back to doing regular painting, and I'll probably end up painting, I don't know, maybe a little mini like this guy. I might do him. Or there's a centaur here, and the centaur might be kind of interesting. The last time I did minifigs, which was a week or so ago, I painted this guy. Demon thing. Yeah, so I finished this one. And maybe I'll do... Oh no, the sword is... Oh, I see what happened. Okay. The sword on this originally broke off. Okay. And I made one out of a toothpick, which looked pretty good, and put it on. But apparently, while I was away, someone broke it off again and stuck it on with a big blob of epoxy. And it's not straight. But that's not my fault. Somebody else did that. Anyway, yeah, so I started working on this submarine. Oh, Brogger, no, that was not a submarine. That was the thing I did before I was working on the submarine. But now I am working on the missile room. And I'm doing some base coating on the bottoms of the bottom deck, and on the insides of this section here, which is where the reactor is going to go. And the process, I need, I should do this first. I paint the fire extinguishers and then paint around them and then finish it up that way. That's what I've done in the past, so that's what I'll do this time too. So I'm going to do some little spots of painting. Okay, fire extinguishers are red. I have to look at my color chart. And neutral gray. Okay. This paint's been all sitting around. So yeah, I'm back from a week away, and then this week I'll be doing this on... Oh yeah, we do Dungeons and Dragons. Actually, it's the main thing we do. We have a campaign that's been going on for over a year now. Thanks about the feathers. I'm trying to... The buzzing is a little vortex spinner thing that shakes the paint violently and is supposed to stir it better than by shaking the bottle. So yeah, we've got a campaign going now for over a year. Alexis Bates, our dungeon mistress, has created the world that we play in. It's really pretty fun. It's really good. And we are... yeah, I can. I play a Furbog fighter. One of our other characters is a Tabaxi bard, who is way more Tabaxi than a bard, although, does some pretty important stuff. And then we have a changeling druid. And the changeling druid is a lot of fun because the changeling part can go into any kind of humanoid sort of thing. The druid part can go into all sorts of animal sorts of things. So it's been fun playing with them. We are all kind of chasing our backstories. My village disappeared when I was young. Everybody in the village disappeared while I was away exploring a cave. And then I was raised by a elf in a sort of, but not quite, cult called the Order of Remardin. Again, this is a home-brewed world. So the Order of Remardin is an offshoot of the Tashiranoon which was a group of ancient order of elf fighters. They were very, very martial. But the Remarden folks were, slightly bigger brush. The Remarden folks were peacemakers. They were known for their ability to go around the known universe and settle disputes. So that's how I was raised. So although I'm a fighter, my main purpose is to slay the beast. So Lynn Farron, who was my mentor as I was growing up, introduced me and brought me into the Order of Remarden. So my quest is to find out what this beast is and slay it. And as far as I've been able to determine from lore that I picked up along the way, the beast is something that is within us. It's the great evil. So I really don't know how that's going to turn out. But that's my quest. The Tabaxi Bard is on a much simpler quest. The Bard's father made the world's best ever lute, and it was stolen by the leader of the band that Nines is his name. That Nines was in, and so the quest is to recover the lute. Well, it's sort of a religious order. I mean, the Order of Remarden, although there isn't a god associated with Remarden explicitly. And from what I could tell is that Remarden and Tashir in ancient times worked together Tashir Anun continued, and the Order of Remarden just sort of disappeared, except for, as far as I can tell, the one person who stumbled into the remains of my village and became my mentor, and then passed down the task of slaying the beast. So, yeah, I have not been able to find out too terribly much about it. The Tashir Anun right now still exist, and they are definitely not a religious order. They're trying to acquire some advanced technology, and probably for not very good purposes. No one knows why. They've been allying themselves with groups of people who are not known to be very good. We have met up. You need to keep it going for a long time. I started playing when it first came out, and I've told this story before, but actually got involved in one of the very first video productions of Dungeons and Dragons in Madison, Wisconsin, in the 1970s. Cable started, and cable had to have a public access channel, and so on Friday nights a group of people would get together and play D&D, very, very first edition, and put it out on the public access channel. And I'm sure no one watched it, because not only did nobody know what D&T was, so why would they watch it, but nobody ever watched a public access channel anyway, especially late on a Friday. Well, I can't be sure of that. This was a college town and it was a Friday night, and you could never really know what people were going to latch onto. But yeah, I worked the camera with D&D back then, and there were like level 1 characters, so people would meet in a tavern and fight gnolls, and hardly anything ever happened during these sessions, but it was kind of fun. We ordered pizza and then left like at 1 or 2 in the morning and went to the donut bakery next door that was just putting out the donuts for the next day. So that was kind of fun. I painted the fire extinguishers on the other side of this. It's raised up, so those should be okay. And there's a bunch of them on here too, so I might as well, since I've got the red paint out, I'm gonna paint all the fire extinguishers. So yeah, we're still playing, except this time I actually get to play a character. Our third party member, the changeling druid, also had a village torn up and disappeared. We were able to. There were many tribes of changelings escaped their world that was being destroyed and came to our world. And many of them were captured because the changelings have an artifact called a powerful transmutation device. And that was one of the things that the Tashira knew. That's how these things get kind of linked together in the lore that Alexis has created. We're trying to recover the very first Arat Mall. Says had kidnapped a whole lot of changelings, and we were able to rescue them. That was quite an event. And then spent in game time, I think 3 weeks in a cave, getting them from where they were captured to safety. At least we hope it's safety. So yeah, so we had cave exploration, and there's always something in a cave, right? So that was kind of interesting. This was way in the aft of the submarine, so this side of the bulkhead faces out toward all the machinery that reduces the steam from the reactor to anyway, yeah, still playing, and it's really been a lot of fun. So Zoria, our changeling druid, is still sort of on a quest to find out who destroyed their village. She found her father, but not yet her mother. Her mother is out exploring somewhere. So in the background of all of this, we've met some interesting characters. One, Coromonth, was one of our very first major foes, and yeah, that would be good. If you don't mind typing it in, that would be kind of cool. How long has your current game been going on? thing I'm painting are the hatches, and the standard color for the hatches has been a light gray, and then there's a little porthole in some of them that you can see through, and I do that with a tiny bit of chrome to make it look like glass, and then I paint the handles. I do the handles red, but I do that with a little fine tipped felt pen. There's some of these things I don't know what they are, so I'll just paint them a color when it comes time to do that. Oh, so you're doing two? Are you a character in both of them? Are you DMing? So, yeah. So tell me a little bit about the games. I go on about Submarine Wednesday here. So as I paint these things, I paint over the edge of them, because then when I do the bulkhead color itself, I paint up to the edge. But this way, you know, it's a little messy, but it makes sure that the hatch color goes all the way down to the bulkhead. And then, you know, I always have the situation where you get the wrong color on the wrong spot and then go back and forth to do touch up, but it's all just part of it. Open hatch? There aren't very many. Some of them are open. Paint the inside of the hatch, actually. Oh, I was just wondering if you were a player in those two games, or if you're actually DMing. Check. The task here is to make this into a submarine eventually. The control panels. This is also supposed to be painted light gray. Wow, there's a lot of stuff on that. There's all sorts of little dials and buttons and things. That's supposed to be painted light gray also. But if I lay it face down, then it will get messed up. And I'm not going to be painting this side soon, so I'll just wait until this side's done. So are you playing a scripted campaign, or as DM, or are these like realms that you've created yourself? I don't get to talk about our campaign that much on the stream. I'm usually what I end up doing, because there's not often somebody in chat, is that I carry on a monologue of 1960s television. So, yeah, that's actually really the best because, you know, players, I have to say, players being one, tend to be kind of unpredictable. And if you try to do like a scripted game, it might not go over that well because the players might not, they might not do what you think they should. So that's really cool that you're doing that on your own. How many players do you have in your games? Every once in a while, it's like a little... It's sort of like there's just a little something in the paint, okay, like a speck of dust or dirt or something. And when that happens, it's really annoying. Get closer to the screen to read it. Okay, well, that's really cool. So you're playing across continents. Okay. I have to say that because it's unusual to run into anybody from Oklahoma because it's a really sparsely populated place. We were just in Germany not too long ago. Our son and daughter-in-law just had a baby, and we went to visit. Spent a good deal of time. That's one of the reasons that this stream wasn't happening, is because we were babysitting, literally spending a lot of time just sitting, holding the baby so that they could actually get a nap. They are in Berlin, and we really, really like Berlin. And we have spent time in Hamburg and in Lübeck. We really love the Christmas markets. Oh yeah, in Weimar. And so, yeah, Christmas markets in Lübeck and in Weimar, which, you know, they're very different than the huge ones that you get in the big cities like Hamburg and Berlin. But those are the places we visited. Traveling by train. And that's kind of interesting because I keep reading about and hearing about people in Germany complaining about the trains, right? They don't run on time, there's construction going on, sometimes the train is canceled. And all I can do is go, seriously, you're complaining? Because passenger trains, essentially, except for a corridor along the East Coast connecting like Washington, D.C. and New York and Philadelphia, passenger trains just barely exist in this country. Yeah, we've been meaning to get south. Regensburg, okay. We were planning to do that one year and it was 2020, right? And so everything got canceled. But we've also had, we did a day trip to Dresden. We saw the green room, all the treasures there. That was really pretty fascinating. That was, I understand that a lot of the things that were stolen have been recovered, so that's really cool. It's really good that happened. That theft was pretty audacious. The security there had to go through like 3 doors in order to get in. There's multiple doors. It's kind of like we have a saying, closing the barn door after versus how it had a little bit of that feeling. It was hyper security after the theft had occurred and not before. That was interesting. Visited Sanssouci. It was really late in the fall when we did that, and so a lot of the flowers and things were gone, but it was really fascinating, and the tour guides were very good. So that was a nice trip. I guess we've been to quite a few places. We visited the museums on Museum Island, of course. This color is almost the same color as the primer. It's hard to tell it's actually been painted. And then there's this weird hatchway here. You mean Europe or US? Oh boy. I have to say which I prefer on stream. I really like Europe. It's really nice there, and it's really nice and interesting. My son and daughter-in-law have lived abroad now for practically forever, it seems. What about you? Have you had a chance to travel to the U.S.? I'm sure, it's so many different contrasting experiences you can have in this country. So the next bit is a really tiny bit, is that the very tops of the fire extinguishers get painted metallic. Europe has a huge variety as well, so we've had a chance to visit. They're friendlier here, I guess. In some ways they are. There are places in Europe that are, abrupt and brusque. You managed to meet somebody who's in Oklahoma. Asking. I'll have to look at the color chart again. Dark aluminum. Okay. See, okay. See, pretty much met online. That's a good way to do it. Yeah. Actually, that used to be a good way to... That would really date me. I used to play America Online with my dad when he was with us. It was primitive, I guess you would say. Definitely primitive. But we would play card games, we'd play euchre, and we'd play mini golf, and there was a sort of a chat function that you could use. Down in the lower left, if I recall. The pixelation then was pretty amazing. Okay, so for this bit, I need to see what I'm doing up close. So I've got these head magnifiers, which is magnifying lenses. Yeah, that go there. They're full of dust. Anyway, put these on. And if I am able to get my eyes to focus through these lenses, then I can actually see things pretty well. It's cool that you're able to stay in touch like that. These metallics are really good, the metal colors. They're made for airbrushing, so they're really thin. So you have to be kind of careful because they spread very quickly, I guess is the way to put it. But they cover it pretty nicely. So what I'm doing is touching the tops, the nozzles of the fire extinguishers. Hitting it all over the place, but that'll get covered with the other color, the base color. So I absolutely know that when I built this as a kid, I did not do things like paint the tops of the fire extinguishers a different color, nor did I put a drop of paint, tiny little spot of paint on the hatchways to make it look like the window was there. Just didn't do that kind of detail. But I am on this, so sorry I can't look at chat right now because I am trying to paint the tops of fire extinguishers. Bit. What I might do is I might show off what I've accomplished on this submarine so far. I've got about a third of it done, but I'm hoping that it is the complicated third because there was a huge amount of detail in the crew quarters. I took the time and okay, what are you painting, by the way? What minifig are you doing? Here, so I'm painting these. Oh my. See, whenever I put these on, I always end up seeing flaws. And in this particular case, what I'm seeing is that even though I was applying it fairly heavily, the fire extinguishers are not covered in red paint. It looks really scabby and really scabby. So I'm gonna have to get the red paint out again, and those definitely need touching up. They're very messy. These are kind of too. I'm not quite sure what was going on with that, why there's such a problem. But yeah, that's why part of why this submarine is taking forever to paint and put together. I mean, the assembly is a presentable thing. Even the difficult assembly that I had putting together the crew quarters and things, where I had to take it apart 3 times when I did that a couple streams ago. It's the painting. And nobody's going to get close enough to see this, right? So it's like, why am I doing this to myself? But I want it to look good. As good as adequate. I want it to look adequate, which is what I aim for here. And this is not adequate. Ah, okay. Are you using those in your stream? Or are you just doing them? Really? So you're doing a film noir. You're doing a film, a gangster film noir D&D campaign. That sounds like a lot of fun. So if it's a crime story, are you the guys committing the crimes, or are you the guys who are trying to solve the crimes and capture the bad guys, assuming that you consider the criminals to be bad guys? Here I am repainting things that didn't get painted the first time. That's the one that's been going on. That sounds like a lot of fun. So was the evolution intentional, or did it kind of happen by accident? Did you get caught in some sort of time warp kind of thing and get transported back? Or I guess maybe forward? Okay, you're a mean DM. I mean, when as a DM you start holding families captive as a coercion technique. That sounds pretty neat. Are you doing really fiction, or are you kind of like using some historical material too in your campaign? These actually got painted kind of okay. So mess with those. Yeah, that's really cool. So you as the DM must play the role then of the NPC villains, right? Well, then you're suited to be a DM because, sometimes you get players who get into like chaotic evil and that kind of thing, but it never really works very well. What happened? Okay. So yeah, but as a DM, you can do that. But as if you try to play with them in your game, it doesn't work well at all because they're just disruptive, right? With DM, you can play those characters and play them up. Yeah, I mean, if you just run around going, I'm evil, I'm going to do evil things, I'm going to do a naughty thing to these people, well, I don't see any way really that could work very well as a regular player. It would just be too disruptive. You could not work together as a party. And so that would make that whole thing really difficult. Okay. These are then all painted. These are all painted dark gray. Okay, this is the bottom side of the missile tubes, and so that's just basically a ballast tank. The inside of this area here, which is where the reactor is going to go, is all the hull color. And that's all it is. It's just the hull color. Am I getting this wrong? Oh no, this is the inside of the missile room. This is the side that faces the okay, this is really something. So they put this hatchway in. See that here? Well, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, if you're just running around being a brigand and being a jerk, essentially, that's really no fun, and it doesn't make any sense, actually. But yeah, you need to have a motivation, a tragic backstory, as we would end up calling it in our campaign. That kind of thing, right? Okay, so goes this way. Got it. Trying to figure out how this would work. So this goes. So I have to just talk about the model making process here sometimes. Okay. So this goes here like that, right? And then there's as we'll see in assembly number 7, there's some decks. That goes above this. Okay. But looking at what they did here is there's a hatch back here, right? Not a hatchback. So there's a hatch. And when you put this here, like that, it covers it up. It totally disappears. It doesn't exist anymore. You cannot in any way, shape, or form see it. So why is it even there? Yep, this model does that kind of thing. Is that the designers put these things in, and it's almost like this guy here said, design a bulkhead, right? And then they do, and then someone else says, design a thing to put in front of the partly covering the bulkhead, and they never talk with each other. And then you've got a hatch that is completely concealed, 100% concealed behind one of the other pieces. Just go figure. This one kind of makes sense, and that is the other side of a hatch that you can see on the missile side. But weird, just weird. Okay. Oh, big long post here. Okay, so maybe I'll read this, and sometimes people just listen in, but they'll watch on YouTube too. The villain from the story works great because he was the villain. I'm going to put my other glasses on so I can see. If I'm going to read something, I should probably see it pretty well. He was a villain from when they were students, because the characters in this campaign were students for a while. There's a civil war going on, and the brother of the villain got killed by the Democratic side, which made him side with the fascists. Oh, yeah, that would do it. That's a really good, complicated backstory. So when the villain, as a student, because this was a magic school, wanted to resurrect his brother in a ritual, the player stopped him. No, why did the other players stop him? But then that starts to make sense. That's a really cool backstory for a villain. Something that's not just straightforward and simple. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. There's always that, isn't there? That there's... Well, that must have been interesting playing that. So when you set up that scene, okay, that the resurrection of the evil villain's brother would potentially have released an even greater evil. Had you set it up so that the other players were not willing to do it, or was there actually a chance that they might have allowed that to happen? But sometimes you can just let, I mean, intentionally or not, you can just let really bad things occur. Okay. So they knew that the potential was there, you know, otherwise they wouldn't have, why would they bother stopping him if they weren't aware of the potential risk? So they knew there was a risk, but okay. Yeah, that's good DMing, is to have something like that could basically throw the entire campaign off into a totally different direction, right? I mean, just like totally, completely different. To actually let that happen. Yeah, that's a cool thing to do, and kind of risky for a DM, because you never really know exactly what might happen, right? Okay, what I'm trying to decide here. Okay. Oh, and that's right. That caused the split. And now the villain is the villain character who lived but was really upset because the friends didn't let them resurrect their brother. Okay. You do really good character development. You know, that isn't essential for a DM, but it really makes the gameplay much better. That's really well done. What I'm trying to do is decide whether I'm just going to go ahead and paint these larger pieces first, and then, you know, do detail around the fire extinguishers and stuff a little bit later. I guess it doesn't much matter. This one's easy to paint. This whole thing is just one color, so it's a matter of getting paint down onto it with a very large brush and trying to keep the brush marks to a minimum. This one has this hatch on it, and I need to paint around that. Yeah, I hope your players appreciate. Well, I'm sure they do. You've been playing that game for over a year, so they obviously do appreciate what you're doing. Just getting the right brushes here. This paint has been setting a bit near the bottom third of the bottle, and sometimes the ratio of pigment to solvent gets thrown off, so we'll see how this goes. I'm going to give it a super good stirring because it's been setting for over a week. After these pieces are painted, they're going to need to dry before I can really do much on the other side. And they might need a second coat. I think what I'm going to do next after these is maybe paint some of the machinery bits There's these little machinery bits that need to be painted. Paint around the edges here of this thing. Oh my. I'm going, oh my, because the paint is almost gone. Not sure how well the paint is going to work. I might need to open a new bottle, but we'll see. These particular bits are not critical. I mean, in terms of they end up looking, but I don't want them to look bad either. Did do thinner on this paint, so I hope it levels okay. What was that balance trying to, I don't know if you, when you get older paint like this, it's, if there's too little solvent in it, then the stuff doesn't level. It leaves brush marks all over the place. Just kind of ugly. Then it too much, and it runs all over the place where you don't want it. And also doesn't cover and then needs multiple coats. So this is to be seen. So when you arrived in the future, was the Civil War already over? Or did the players arrive during the war? To the edges of the door. Let's see how this covers what's going on here. Oh, and you threw another wrinkle in there I wasn't aware of. That there's an issue of humans versus non-humans. You hadn't asked what kind of what you were playing. Let's put this paint on the surface and see how it looks. Definitely dark gray. Players had to leave an Astro. Oh. That must have been fun having an Astro Elephant party. Okay, this is I'd say not working terribly well. Why? I've had to do this before, and I will apologize. It's really not a good thing to do, but sometimes the paint just doesn't level right. It just gums up. And with these acrylic paints, the easiest thing to do is just get them off. And try again. So it was kind of working okay. And then just stopped working okay. Paint is too thick. And I need to thin it. Sorry for the digression here. Do some emergency, redoing. I need to redo this. And I think at this point in the model build, the better part of valor is to use a new bottle of paint and use this one for like dungeon tiles where there's just a whole lot of texture, okay, like bricks and stones and stuff, and where the consistency of the paint isn't quite so critical. But here, I was kind of afraid of that. You get near the bottom of the bottle and it just is not working that well. It's too thick. So I'm going to put a little thinner in it just to make it usable in the future for something else, but I'm going to have to get a new bottle before I continue working on the submarine. This. So, yeah, I finally started painting a little bit, and the painting is not going well. It's not unusual for this relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons for it to become not relaxing and not very much painting. Right around the door here, just have to say what happened was that because the consistency of the paint is just too thick, it just kind of made a mess. It's a super scientific, high-tech thumbnail, and get the gummy paint out of the way. Redo the whole thing there. Too thick. That'll show. It doesn't. You won't be able to see this really well once it's assembled. but it would not look good. So we are watching at the moment Relaxing Unpainting. This is Relaxing Unpainting with Dyson Dungeons. Maybe I should call it depainting. Paint removal. Okay. There's that. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining in. Yeah, become a follower. That would be terrific. I really appreciate it. And good luck with your campaigns. The one you're playing right now just sounds really fascinating. You know, in the good storyline development too. And I hope your characters are enjoying it. So thanks for joining in. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll be back Friday. I'll be gone most of next week and the week after. Like I said, family stuff and travel stuff. But each episode, each stream, I'll let you know what the current plans are. But I'll be back on Friday. Bye. In the meantime, I need to find another bottle of dark gray paint so that I can dark gray paint this. Boy, does that look, that really looks good. Yeah. Can't save that. Yeah, sometimes, the simplest looking things, instead of painting an incredibly detailed control panel or something that would take the entire 3 hours of the stream or whatever just to paint some dials on, just like this whole thing should be one color, right? Just brush it across. Nope, doesn't work. In this case, the always something was the consistency of the paint. Okay, I'm going to be off camera for just a bit as I attempt to find a replacement bottle of dark gray paint. And it just so happens that since we use dark gray paint in vast quantities for our dungeon tiles, there are a couple of them there. What I would like to have, since this one is a brand new bottle, is I would like to have that little ball bearing that should be on the bottom of this. You can hear it clicking. What'd be nice is to have one of those in this bottle, but don't have an extra. So I'm just going to give it a whole lot of this vortex rattling. So once again, unlike the real George Washington, because it turned out that this submarine was built in less than a year. It was like 200 some days, at least before they launched it. It doesn't mean it was operational, because even after they launch ships, any kind of ship, it usually goes on a good long time before they become fully operational. Anyway, yeah, the amount of time going into the model of the submarine is probably longer than it took to make the real submarine. Yeah, I doubt that they had painting problems. They had, no, maybe they did. Maybe they had horrible peeling paint and stuff. You just never know. will hopefully save the day, or at least save this bulkhead. Use the stuff off the top of the bottle cap so I don't waste it. No, much better so far. Well, that will level nicely. It would be good if it did. Do maybe some little details on the door. I might try that. Okay, well, some flaws in it there, but it is what it is. So I just want a lot of paint on this. And like anything else that's painted, this is supposed to be cemented into the bottom of the submarine. It originally wasn't. I don't think the intent was to have this piece actually painted. But it wouldn't look right if it weren't, because you'll be able to see it from the side when you view the submarine when it's assembled. But the new paint is definitely better than the old paint. The side that shows, so I need to make sure that this is covered. This little angle bit. Okay, well, it looks pretty scabby right now, but sometimes I found that, you know, that's just different. It's slightly different. It's glossy, and when it dries, it levels. It levels okay. I'm hoping that that's the case here. I'm going to put my head magnifiers on again, because I need to paint around the fire extinguishers and the hatches. And what I will end up doing is, after I paint these bulkheads, probably will be break time. And after break, I'm going to plan to cement the missile tubes. This is the 7th. And this is the 15 of them that are not launching, firing in quotes, missiles. goes into the machine shop, this side. And I don't know what color that is yet, so I'm not going to mess with it. Piece where that hatch doesn't even show. That actually might be being where I end up holding it. Like the sticky tack right there. No, I can't because I can't paint on the bottom of it. Painting between the fire extinguishers and the door frame here. With an apparently less than really steady hand today. You're getting the silent service. I hope the music's playing. I'm just moving. Because I'm being quiet at the moment, as I am attempting to paint little detail-y kinds of things here. It's painting the edges of the fire extinguishers. I don't know if those will show or not. And the thing's assembled. It's really hard to tell sometimes until it is assembled, or at least test assembled, what will show and what won't. This model. Whenever our cats came down, usually when he comes down, he makes a lot of noise. This time he was just walking by silently. There we go. The kitty's saying hi. Okay, well that's adequate. Let me clean this, and I'll get the bigger brush and then paint these. Always remember where you put the stupid little tube, and I always don't remember where I put the stupid little tube. Not stupid. I mean, it's just a plastic tube, right? I should just set it there where I know where it is all the time, but I didn't. Okay, I'm going to be able to hold it here because this hatch is behind this other bulkhead, and you won't be able to ever see it. So it allows me to hold it there. I paint it. Best way to hold a piece, but it will do given the circumstances. And this bulkhead goes way in the back. Way back here. And this is the reactor room, which will be, I hope, pretty cool looking once it's done. Okay, set that there. And this is the bulkhead that goes there. This side, with all the detail, goes on the missile room side, and that'll take some time to paint. This side goes on the reactor room side, and it's just this dark gray color. This bit here, folding it, Unseen. That dry, and I'm hoping that it levels nicely. Here's the thing I was looking for. It really does. When it dries, it usually levels and it looks okay. Kind of like this. This turned out okay. Bridge is even a little bit, some little spots there that's not quite painted. Door looks okay. I need to, I'm not sure I'll highlight the hinges, but I'm going to highlight the door handle. I could really do on the hatches. In here. I think this will show kind of a cutout in the cutaway view. It's going to show. Okay, it's best to leave those alone. Learn my lesson of leave things alone. Yeah, got it. Get the gray out of the big brush. All right, after this all needs to dry pretty thoroughly. There's a couple of little things I can do on these. I can highlight the door handles, the handles on the hatches with the felt tip pen. Can't see if there's a window on this one or not. Some of these hatches have little windows. Yep. And that needs to get a tiniest little dot of chrome paint. So I'll probably do those little detail things after the break, but the main thing I'm going to do is cement these missile tubes together. Those need to be cemented, and then they'll have seams that show, hopefully not very much, but those seams will need to be kind of sanded down so that they don't show. And if they do, some of them might actually have to be filled in with some plastic putty. But I can't prime them until they're prepped. Okay, so that's what I'll be doing next, is cementing those together so that I can get them prepped for priming. And then I'll finish up a little detail on these hatches. Okay, that hatch doesn't show. It's so weird. At least on this side it doesn't show. It does on the other, but there's that. Okay, I'm going to take a break now, and I will be back. It's a little bit before noon, so I'll be back hopefully around 12:30ish and continue to grind away slowly but surely on this submarine. So we'll see you in about half an hour, and then I'll start working on some other little detail stuff. Okay, like these pieces here, these machinery pieces, these get painted this color, which is good. I'll be able to use this hopefully. Yeah, so I'll do the detail on the hatches. Okay, the hatch. And then cement the torpedo tubes, and then work on the machinery part here. And then depending on how this is coming along, I may begin to work on some of the detail on the other sides of these. Okay, so we'll see you in about half an hour. Turn on the brake thing, then you. Break is over, finally, for me. And we're back with more relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. I'm continuing to work on the missile deck here, where the Polaris missiles reside before they're sent off to destroy something. Anyway, yeah, so I was painting some bulkheads dark gray, like here and here and here, and I'm going to put these into my boxo parts. The boxo parts so that they are out of the way. This is the very bottom of the missile deck. This is where the silos get attached eventually. What I'm going to be working on next, there's several things I'm going to be doing. One is I'm going to start cementing together missile tubes. And there's lots of them. And then depending on how that goes, hoping it will go well, is I'm going to then paint the machinery that goes into this deck. And some of it's already on the deck, okay? So that'll just get painted bone white. And then there's a couple of parts here. They're smaller, so I put them aside. To check the fit, right? After things are primed, they don't fit quite as well as they did before. There we go. One goes there. Here. Like that. And then there's this little pipe thing that will eventually go across between them. So, yeah, but I'll figure out how to paint that later. Yeah, so I'll do that, and then I'll paint these bits, and probably paint, this is supposed to be painted the same color as the machinery. And what I'm likely to try to do is just go ahead and paint that, and then later when I paint this deck, a light gray, which will be almost exactly the same color as it is now. Over, and we'll go back and forth a couple of times until it's done right. But now, setting those aside, I have 15 missile tubes that go together like this, need to be cemented. And then after they're cemented, they need to be held together. I'm going to get some clothespins for that. And then you can see, it's not real obvious, but you can see there's a seam there that, because the parts don't fit together perfectly, okay? And some of the cement might leak out. That seam will need to be sanded down, and then I can prime them. Sometimes there's little gaps in the seam, like here. Tiny little gaps, and I don't want those to show in the finished product. So I'm going to, nobody's been on asking for a flip today. It's kind of disappointing. I'm going to do a flip anyway. This is the color I'll use later. I have this little piece of balsa wood with a dot on one side. I can see if it lands dot side up or dot side down. Five to 1 today. Yep. The law of randomness didn't quite randomize. Get some space here. And what I'm using is model cement, liquid cement, instead of tube cement. When I did this originally as a kid, it was tube cement because that's pretty much all we had at the time. And the problem with the tube cement is that it comes out really sticky, and even if you use a toothpick or a needle or a pin or something, you just get long spiderwebby strands of cement mess. I need to get the clothespins. I meant to do this while it's still on break, but I didn't. Yeah, I'm getting close. High-tech gadgetry here, right? Pins. These are really fun. You can put little eyes on them. You can draw a little eye there. Maybe put some teeth on it. Pin dragon puppets. Or not. So what happens with these is they get cemented together like that. Grabbed with a clothespin in the center, and it's held tight until later. And then I fix the seams and prime them. Then after they're primed, they will eventually be painted yellow. Yep, that's the plan. The reality, we'll see. See how reality goes here. So this liquid cement comes with this brush, which they say is like a micro detail kind of brush thing, but it's not. It's really quite large. But for this purpose, it should be okay. What I want to do is make sure that there's cement on the inside. And I'm going to put the entire seam. They always say use sparingly. Sparingly is a good idea with this. In this particular kind of cement, what it does is it melts the plastic. So it essentially welds it together. That will be exactly what it does, right? And then I'll fix the gaps, the little gaps, sand down the seams where they don't mesh exactly right. Maybe even have to fill in the gaps a little bit on the seams. See how it looks when it's done. I'll put them over here. I'm doing this, I can talk a little bit about Dyson Dungeons. Dyson Dungeons is primarily a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. We're a group of friends and relatives who have been playing a D&D campaign for a little over a year now. It's a really fun campaign. And we stream that with a live chat 3 Sundays a month at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Currently it's daylight savings time. And it may or may not, I don't recall if the law changed or not, but see, that was bad. What happened there, this is a disaster. This tube is no longer usable. I'll have to get one from another kit. If the cement gets on the outside, okay, it dissolves the plastic, and now I've just got fingerprints on it. Can't really use that anymore. So I'll have to get another one out of another kit, which is okay. That's why I got extra kits. So that I'd have spare parts. Didn't ruin that one. Yep, so I had extra parts, But just like, just because of eventualities like that can happen. Is I got a little bit of cement on my fingers, and I touched the plastic, and it just dissolved. It's okay if it leaks out a little bit. It gets touched. Anyway, before I made that mess and ruined one of them, when I get one out of the other kit, you'll notice it's going to be a slightly different color. But that won't matter because all the surfaces get painted. When they come together, what can happen sometimes is they don't align perfectly. And so there's a ridge there all the way around this particular tube because the parts don't align. Because they don't align, that's where you end up with the need to do a fair amount of sanding. So yes, we're Dungeons and Dragons, and we stream 3 Sundays a month, most of the time. Sometimes because of holidays and things, the schedule gets off a little bit. With a live chat, and you can catch these episodes also on YouTube and as a podcast. And I'd like to invite anybody who's watching this or listening to it to check out our campaign because it is wonderful. Our Dungeon Mistress has created a very imaginative world in which we play. Our characters are a lot of fun. Pretty much PG-13. So, it's good, clean fun to listen to our campaign. Hi, Lafala, you missed the flip. I did one. Okay, well, after I'm done cementing these together, especially after I succeed in getting at least one, and I'm not sure, maybe along the way I'll need another one, replacement part, because I messed one up in a major way. Get melty fingerprints all over the outside of that tube. Working with this cement is always potentially messy. I know some modelers use cyanoacrylate, the super glue. It's essentially what it is. The brand name. It holds really well, but it doesn't. This at least can stay tacky for a little bit. So if something gets misaligned, it's possible to reset it. It does has the disadvantage though of melting the plastic and potentially marring the surface like I did with that one. with that one tube, which is now a doomed tube. This has been an interesting model to build. It's just on Wednesdays because usually the stream started as a place to show us assembling and painting our dungeon tiles that we'll use in our campaign. Done many dungeon tiles and many minifigs in the streams over the months. But one time I didn't have any, and so I started building some of the models that I've got here, and one of these is the 1960s vintage Renwall cutaway Polaris launching submarine prototype George Washington. This is, in fact, a one of three that I purchased vintage 1960s submarine model kits. I purchased 3 so I would have spare parts, so that if I totally destroyed a tube like I did this one, I would have extras. And in fact, I've had to do that. Like this piece here. This piece here is borrowed from another kit because the original one was badly warped. This is also warped. As you can see, there's a curve in it, but it's the least warped of the 3. One was fairly straight but wavy. This one's just bent. So one thing you will need to do is warm it up a little bit and bend it back so it's straight. So it will cause a problem. You can't have like a bowed deck on your nuclear submarine. So this is one of the originals, 1960s vintage model kits. I built one when it first came out. I think I was like in 7th grade, something like that. And was able to get these online because people sell, it's kind of cool. You can get a lot of old vintage model kits online. And if you feel like, building something you did when you were younger, or you can't get a remake, sometimes they'll remake model kits. Back in the day, this actually was reproduced several times in different variations. The George Washington was the prototype of the very first missile launching submarine, but it was also the first kit. And they came out with, and I've got one as a spare part, the Ethan Allen, and that changed a little bit. The only place that is different is in this deck, this particular deck. The missile launching tubes, instead of opening fore and aft, open port to starboard, side to side. But most of the parts are interchangeable. Almost like 95% of them are interchangeable. This tube, I might scrap this tube. We'll see. It's got a flaw. It's got a dent in it. And I can put that in the back, I guess, when I assemble it. But we'll see. Pretty common in this model is that it's all injection molded, and some of it was just really poorly done. There were parts where it was clear that the mold didn't fill with plastic. And so the part was only partially formed. There are others where just weird things would show up, like little circles and things that shouldn't have been in there that showed up in the molding process. So some of it is just very beautifully designed, just immense detail. Some of the control panels and things are very, very highly detailed. But then sometimes the execution of it, the molding of it, was very poorly done. So the parts just were unusable. So I have borrowed parts from... There was one kit that was mostly good. I mean, like, almost totally complete. That's the one I'm working with for the most part. And I have borrowed parts from all 3 kits already. When I'm all done, I'm going to have 2 kits made up of, well, they'll be less than perfect, we'll just say that. This has got a little dent in it too, but it's not as pronounced as that one. It's in exactly the same place. Yeah. So there was a problem in the mold. This one's not good either. So I'll have to go to those. I didn't check, those. When I took these off the trees, they looked, for the most part, like they were okay. I didn't check the real detail. I'm seeing that there's some flaws in some of these. So I'm going to check the other kits to see whether or not they are a little bit better. Sometimes what you find is that even though these things might have been manufactured years apart using the same molds, you end up with the same problems. And then I'll check to make sure I got them all right. It's possible to put them together, lovely, so that it's like bottom, instead of matching them up. I mean, if I was chatting too much about our D&D campaign and not paying attention, I might have messed up. So I'm going to cement this one. This is the last of them. And then I'm going to go back and inspect the other ones and take a look at the other kit to see what I can see, because the dimple is like on almost all of these. Let's see, I definitely need to replace this one. So I'm going to find the missile tubes in the other kits. I know one of these, they were already assembled, and that was a mess. This is the one I'm using to build. I'm going to have to go off camera again for just a few seconds to get the other kits. this is what you're dealing with here. Take a look at this. This one is a spare parts model. It is the same as the one I'm working on. It's a George Washington. I'm going to move the camera so you can see what I've got here. The assembly started on this. You can see they put the torpedo room together, didn't paint anything. Then glued a whole bunch of stuff out of step. They actually glued all their torpedo tubes together. And, well, see, look at this. This is a special one. This is the one that has a spring in it. And they totally screwed it up. Yeah, see, these are don't have the dimples in them. I'm going to pull them out and do like a pairwise comparison. I may end up keeping some of these, even though they're cemented together. If they're not too bad. You know, if they're usable and not too gross in terms of cement all over the place and things like that. I might switch some of them out. Anyway, there's a bunch of them there. Let's see what we got. Now you buy spare parts. Yes, spare parts. Okay, this one's messy. Can't use that. Yeah, they got well cemented, but they don't have. Yeah, I don't know if you can see this on camera at all. You can see the color difference. Okay, this is the one I'm working with. This is the spare, the lighter colored one. And at the base, these have a dimple in them. There's just a flaw in the molding. There, it looks like it's been hit by a sledgehammer, you know, slammed pretty hard. This one's just really bad. Pick through these and pick the ones that are not really, that are okay, that are salvageable, okay? Where there isn't cement all over the place. And it's okay. I know this is boring, but in order to get this thing to work, I need to do it. It's bad. Good. But yeah, see, that's got a really bad dent in it. It's got a pretty bad dent in it. So those three are dented. I need to replace a fourth one. This is the one where I got my fingers all over it. So those replace some bad ones. Now I'm going to inspect the these things all. Are they all going to be like that? All dimpled. Hmm. Okay, I'm going to go to the... I know I cemented these together and I was looking at them fairly carefully, but they all have that dent in it. Sometimes it's really bad. Sometimes it's not so bad. I might have to start over here in with a totally separate kit. Let's see what the Ethan Allen is like. So I thought this was going to be zip, zip, zip. One of the easiest things to do, and I have found over and over again that the easiest things to do sometimes turn out to be like the yuckiest. It just doesn't work. Now, see, they glued theirs together too. And these are really badly done. I don't know why, you know? This is step 7, right? Step 7 in building this submarine. And 2 out of the 3 models, first thing they did was cement the missile tubes together. It's like, what the heck? What are you thinking? These are a darker color yet. As far as I can tell, almost every single one of these, I mean, it was really badly done. Maybe that's why they quit working on it, is that they massacred their missile tubes. Yeah, just none of them are worth, none of them can be salvaged. Okay, well, some of these missile tubes in the completed submarine may end up having little dents on them. So, since I can't salvage anything from the Ethan Allen and the other submarine model, I'm going to so what I'm going to do, since I picked 4 out to replace 4 that are bad, okay, I still got a few to look at here. I'm going to inspect them and pick the best of them and use those to replace the worst of those. At least that's the intent. Maybe a couple more in here. Look. Rummage, 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 clatter, clatter, clack, clack. Okay, well, this is what I've got to work with. Hopefully I won't knock those over. I'm going to throw these in that box, just so I don't confuse them. $15. Let's see how many of these are usable. And then I'll check them against the other kit. Bad. Pretty crappy.
Got a gap, but it might be usable. Like these parts were warped before they glued them together, or what they didn't do is they didn't clamp them like I did. Not even sure what cement they used, because some of it will just scrape off. It's not like regular model cement. It's like I think they use like Elmer's glue. Well, may have the way it behaves. Okay, well, I'm going to look at these to see if there's any that are really badly dented. I'm going to try to make sure I get the dents in the back. And we'll see how much it shows after it's been primed. Gives me a chance to fix the alignment on some of these as well. So you're watching relaxing, fiddling around with plastic, with Dyson Dungeons fiddling around. Cool. Wouldn't take them off the clip yet, but sometimes they're just not aligned very well. And this gives me a chance to fiddle with the alignment just a little bit so that there's less manipulation later in order to get the seam to not show. Yeah, it's got a pretty good sized dent in it. It might be. This one's dented up on top and the bottom. This one's really not good. So I'm going to replace that one. Disappointing that the other modelers all decided that they really wanted to cement the missile tubes together when it was way out of sequence in terms of model building this kit. Make do with what we have. And it's bad. This is a replacement. 12. I need 3 more. So amongst these, I need to find the 3 best. This one's not too bad, but it's got a really big gap in it. Did a really poor job with this. Why do I keep losing count? Good God. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. Let's see how bad these dents are. I'll live with this one. 13. And I'll recount them all because, you know, can't trust your counting. The problem with these, even though they don't have a little dent in them, is that when they were glued, they've got big gaps that would have to be filled in. And the filling in doesn't always work that well. Okay, let's see. See if I have 15. Eight, 9, 11, 15. Okay, so I got what I need. And then after this cement sets, I'll be doing some sanding. It doesn't look like I need to do filling, but I definitely need to do sanding because the they don't line up perfectly and the seams show. And these get painted glossy, so those kind of flaws will show up pretty seriously. 15, okay. And this one is the one with the spring and the lever in it. And I don't want to mess with this one right now. I'm going to mess with that some other year. Okay. So these are the extra tubes. I'm going to put them, some of them are from that kit. A couple of them are from the kit I was just working on. But those are extras, and there they go. They are now officially spare parts if necessary. Yeah, the boxes are different too. This box is breaking on, has a pretty decent top. And the picture's still pretty good, but the bottom's falling all apart. Okay, I'm gonna get this out of the way. Be right back. Since I was there, I thought, well, why not? I'll show you the stuff that's been finished so far. Part of the submarine has been completed so you can see what it's like and all the detail that's in it. Galley back there, you can see the stoves. The control panels, all the dials and stuff. So I thought, well, yeah, might as well show it to you since it's since I was picking up the box anyway. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like when it's. I mean, it's not perfect. It's not display model probably quality, but I think it's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, it's kind of cool looking. All the little details. I'm happy how the kitchen turned out. So I'm gonna put this back, and I will be back and doing some more relaxing painting. Some painting. Those away later. I'll put toothpicks away later. Okay. Ta-da! Yay! Stuff. Seal the jar. Yeah, that's right. I was going to paint the equipment and the lines on this, like pipes, I think is what they are, or conduits. And also try to paint these bits. Painting these bits is a little harder because there's nothing to grab onto, really. So I'm going to use this and some alligator clips, and I'm going to do that first. And these tabs on the bottom are where they glue into here, okay? They're not really supposed to be painted, so I'm going to grab them with the clip and then paint them. And this, I have to touch this up later. I'm going to have to just grab it here, where theoretically at least that goes into the hole on the top of this. Hole on the top of this. And if I need to touch it up later, touch up the one in the back. There. Okay. So this one white paint. And what I want to do is put a couple of thin coats on. I don't want it to glob up and destroy the detail, and that could happen. But it doesn't always cover in one coat. I'm going to put a couple of coats on that are thin, hopefully thin, and go from there. palette over here. I'm going to use a nice soft bristled brush so that I can, fairly small, so I can get in to all these little nooks and crannies. Because I won't ever all the surface painted. Don't want it all built up. You can see, it's kind of translucent right now. And so it's going to need, sometimes for some of these pieces, I've actually put like 3 coats on. It just turned out better that way than trying to get one thick coat and then have it either cover the detail or have brush marks. So I'm just going to plan on having 3 coats really before it looks right. And for like the sides of this, I might, on the last coat, I might use a bigger brush so I can get a little more, just fewer brush strokes on it. Other spots like the top here with all the detail, keep using the smaller brush. Okay, so that doesn't look very good, but that's okay because it'll get painted at least once more, maybe twice. Stick it in the sticky tack to hold it. I've used this color of paint on the torpedo racks and the tubes that hold the periscopes. And a couple of other just miscellaneous bits of machinery, and minimum of 2 coats. And then it looks okay. I don't know what this is. In the picture on the box, it's all covered with all sorts of dials and control levers and stuff. There's like levers on it, and this has nothing. So it's kind of unusual to have a piece, given how some of this is designed. It doesn't have the detail on it like you see on the box. Usually it's almost more. To the phone. Trying to get a delivery from FedEx, and they're supposed to call the home phone, and if they didn't answer it, yeah, and I'm painting down onto the surface basically because I want to make sure that the surfaces of these control units, whatever they are fully painted, and then I'll paint up to them when I paint the deck gray. And the gray that I'll be painting, it is very close to the primer color. There's an upside and a downside to that, but the major downside is sometimes you can't see what's painted and what isn't if the colors are similar. Ah. Jeez. Whenever there's a big pressure change, like a front comes through, it seems like it just becomes hard to breathe. And for some reason, as I'm doing relaxing painting down here in the workshop, after break, it always seems, I don't know, it's like feels like it gets colder. It's weird. I don't know. This is all part of the missile launch system. It's just the weirdest protuberances and things, and I don't think there's any like control panel detail on it. It's all the same color, at least on the box tops. So, the detail, hopefully the detail doesn't get lost in the monochrome painting. I'll play with it a little bit after I get the last coat on. There might be a couple of spots where I'll get out the felt tip pen, the black felt tip pen, and maybe highlight a couple of things. This just looks a little messy because I'm making sure that the base goes all the way down to the deck so that when I paint up to it, there aren't gaps. And because it needs a second coat, it just doesn't look like it's covered because it's not. After the second, it'll look better. And after the third, for parts of it, it'll look okay. So these lines are pronounced enough on the deck, and they're did this color on the box top. I'm going to go ahead and paint them. Just getting the lines even is going to be, this is just going to be a real challenge later as I paint the deck. Just getting these lines, whatever they are, I think that's what they are, okay? Pretty sure that those units, these things, this is a compressor, and that's an air storage tank. This is some sort of regulator thing, okay? A very complicated piece of machinery. And these lines here come out of the storage tank because the compressor pumps the air into that tank, and then this somehow, I don't know, controls it. And so what these are that I'm painting now, kind of, just slopping paint on them, are the, supposedly what they're doing is they're delivering compressed air to the missile tubes, the silos. Because when these are launched, just like the torpedoes, they're launched with compressed air. So these are the lines that convey the compressed air to the missile tubes. So when this is near the surface, I think they launch these from like 60 feet down. I mean, they're not submerged like 500 feet or something. They get up close to the surface. and the compressed air pushes the missiles up to the surface. And when they hit the surface, the fuel, it ignites. That's what it's designed to do. Pretty sure that that's what this machinery is about. And that's what it looks like. And hopefully I'll be able to get the paint on the base, on the floor. So that these lines, look okay. But for now, I'm just, it's messy because I'm making sure that they're covered. And I'm getting it on, getting way more than I should on the floor. That will be another day, is using a tiny little brush and trying to get these up to, but not over these pneumatic lines. That's what I'll call them. Probably don't need to paint the backs. To be honest, you'll never see the back. But I'm going to do it anyway. Good, but it looks really, really scuzzy. And will continue to look that way until I paint the floor around the pneumatic lines, and then probably come back and do like tiny little spots of paint touching up, because I'll get the gray from the floor up on the line a little too high, and I'll come back and paint down to it, and it'll go too far, and then come back. And there'll be a lot of back and forth before these look good. It's probably a simpler way of doing this, but I am not an expert painter. Anybody watching this, probably knows better than I do about how to make this happen, but it's what I'm doing, and it's adequate, because that's what I go for, is adequately. And then at some point, I need to get the bend out of that. Oh, hi, sorry, I wasn't watching chat. Thanks for joining in. I'm doing fine, thank you. I am doing relaxing submarine painting on Wednesday. On Friday, I will be going back to painting minifigs for our D&D campaign. I'm not sure which. I have many to choose from. But today, I'm working on this 1960s vintage Renwall submarine. And I got the first coat on some of the mechanicals for the missile launching room. And what I'm going to do next is finish some of the detail on the doors. Hatches, actually. But these over here, I painted these earlier. These are bulkheads that are just dark gray, okay? But they have these hatches on them, and the hatches have little handles and little windows. And I'm going to get some chrome paint. I'm going to very carefully try not to knock stuff over. There we go. mixing up the paint here. And I'm going to put on these magnifying lenses so I can see what I'm doing. And you probably can't really see it, but at the top of this door, if this focuses, top of this hatch, there's a little round circle. That little round circle is a window. And I've been painting them chrome because that it actually looks better than if I were to paint it white. And you get a tiniest little dot of this chrome paint. On the tip of this tiny little brush, and I'd say probably about half the time I've been able to get it right where I want it, and about half the time I don't. Then I have to come back with the gray paint and touch it up. Yep, there. Looks like I missed. So I came pretty close, but I've got some little spots that I need to fix. Before I finish today, this paint dries really quickly. I'll come back and touch up around it. That came out pretty well. See? You can see there's a little window in it now. The hatch doesn't have any. And then this is a tiny hatch. But it also has a little window in it. I may end up leaving that one alone. Okay, so I'll need to come back with the light gray paint and just touch up tiniest little bit around the window on this one. That one looks okay. And that one looks okay. So looks like there is one on this side. Of course, the window would go all the way through, wouldn't it? Weird, it doesn't on that one. The handles on the hatches I will make red, and what I do is I use this extremely fine tipped felt pen. Usually pretty successful at just, you can see the handles sort of. And the tiny little touching here. There's little buttons, all sorts of little buttons and things on that control panel. I'll use a felt tip pen on that too. Let's see, got the hatch doors. You know, I can't believe it. Did I paint them? Yeah, I guess I did. It's just so hard to tell. The color, this gray that's on the hatch is almost exactly the same color as the primer. So it's kind of hard to tell that I had actually painted them. This is the tiniest hatch. Up at the very, very top here. And this one you can walk, you can walk through that if it's open. This one you could barely crawl through. You can't see, I'm not going to bother with that. On this side there's a bulkhead that goes right there, so you can't see that hatch. I don't know why they bothered molding it, but they did. Okay, got those done. Now I need to touch up the window on this side with that light gray paint. And it neutral gray it's called. Almost quitting time. I'm going to check to see if this bone white paint is dry enough. I'm going to try to put a second coat on yet this stream. But first I need to do this tiny little bits, itsy bitsy tiny little spots of gray touching up. We got the cream paint in a spot where I didn't want. And what you can see is where the window is on the door. You see the handle. There was that. So I'm finishing up Sub Wednesday here, working on the missile launch room. of the Polaris submarine. I had earlier cemented use of the missile tubes. These missile tubes all go into this deck. Actually, they'll go in there after they're painted, after they're sanded so that the seams don't show. The detail is painted down at the base here. Just a whole bunch of dinking around getting these things to fit, which they don't do now. And then they're painted bright yellow. And then they go up through from this deck, through the holes in this deck, up to the top here. And then, of course, each of these are the hatches at the top of the missiles, and they all have to be painted yellow, and they're round and barely raised, and that's going to be a huge painting challenge because it's a very visible deck, a highly visible deck, and if it looks bad, it looks bad. So there's, kind of a little raised edge, which helps a little bit where it hinges, but then this round thing has a really pretty indistinct edge around it. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that. I may end up trying to make some sort of mask with round holes and then spray painting them. I'm really not sure. I'm not looking forward to trying to do that. So what have I got? Like a little more than 10 minutes. Yeah, let's I'm gonna do a little more painting, a little more relaxed painting here. Get a second coat onto some of these pieces of air handling equipment. This is all designed to, I'm convinced, compress and regulate the compressed air to launch the missiles out of their tubes to the surface, where their fuel will ignite, carrying them 1,500 miles into a place where they can destroy a city. And you gotta love what we did in the 60s. Inventing these. I'm going to start by painting the top here. Looks like this will definitely need 3 coats. It's just not covering very well. But I'm trying to do this with thin coats so that I don't lose the detail that's been molded onto this part of the model. This I'm pretty sure is a compressor. It looks compressory. After the third coat, I think it'll look good. And I used to use this big brush so that I can paint the side and not have all sorts of little brush marks on it. Yeah, that works. Yeah, it works pretty well. So after the third coat, if I do it that way, it should look okay. This is just all rounded surfaces, so I'm going to paint the whole thing using the larger brush. This I'm pretty sure is a tank to hold compressed air, because there's a pipe that comes directly out of the compressor into this, and this is the pipe. the underside of the pipe. And I found when painting minis especially, is that it's really easy to miss entire parts of the model. And then you rotate it and see that you missed entire parts of the model. So I'll go ahead and do this. Since the big brush is out, I'm going to do the sides. Maybe I can get it in there too. Kind of soft bristles, I can work it in there and get the detail on top. This piece of equipment does. It looks very complicated, some sort of massive control mechanism thing. Use this brush to get the rest of these little bits. And after I'm done getting the rest of these little bits, I'll be wrapping up. So I want to thank everybody who joined in to watch Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons. As I had very early at the beginning of the stream, apologized for the sort of unpredictable nature of when this is going to be happening this summer, because it's been many events. Some of them travel, little vacation kinds of things. Sometimes it's been a family event, but there'd been entire weeks without Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons because of those. And this week didn't have Monday because I was traveling. I will be back Friday for sure, but then I'm going to be traveling again. And so next week, maybe Monday, maybe I'll try to do maybe early, just a half a stream on Monday before I need to get going again. But there will be no Submarine Wednesday next week, and there might not be a stream then for about a week and a half. Sometimes it's posted on social media. I don't do the social media. Another member of Dice and Dungeons does. Sometimes it's posted whether or not there'll be a Relaxing Painting stream or not. Sometimes there just isn't. And it'll either happen or it won't. I'm pretty hopeful, that after that, when we get into next year, things will be, there's going to be holidays and stuff coming up. And so there'll be times when this isn't going to happen. But after all the holidays and we get into 2024, when we get into that, hopefully we'll be back to a good Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, more or less 10 until more or less 2, of Relaxing Painting in a regular schedule. These pipes are kind of a pain. But they need to be painted because they are the things that carry the compressed air to the missiles and allow them to be launched on their way to create Armageddon somewhere. So this particular model, as I've mentioned every stream, is one of the 3 that I bought. These are 1960s vintage Renwall cutaway submarines. 2 of them are George Washington's. That's the one I built as a kid, and what I'm building now, which was the prototype of the ballistic missile launching submarine. And I picked these up because I wanted to, they're really cool. And I wanted the chance to redo what I did. But when I did this originally, I know I didn't do things like paint these pipes. I mean, I did not do that kind of detail. I think I built this in like 4 days or something. Hardly painted any of it. Definitely did not clean up like the mold marks on the missile tubes and stuff like that. So this is taking a long time because of just the detail. Every surface, just a lot of detail surface painting. And then there's also just a lot of getting parts to fit because the molding quality leaves something to be desired. There's a lot of scraping and sanding and cajoling to get these parts to go together. And you'll see that when I play around with the missile tubes, as I sand out the mold, the seams from the cementing together. It wasn't the first nuclear-powered submarine, but it was the first nuclear-powered submarine to launch missiles. The first ones were Polaris missiles. Those were single warhead missiles. And they were replaced later by Poseidons, which carried multiple warheads, and then those replaced later by Tridents, which carried even more. As the submarines got bigger and the missiles got bigger. But this was the first prototype of the 3rd leg of the nuclear triad. Okay, so this is what it looks like with the second coat. You can see that it will still need a 3rd, but after the 3rd, it will be, the color will be pretty solid. Be able to, with the fairly arduous process of painting this floor, trying my hardest to not paint over to the sides of these pipes carrying the compressed air or the bases of these pieces of equipment. All right, so I'm going to set that here. Oh yeah, and I keep saying this, I need to get the warp out. So maybe what I'll do is I may end up just doing something like taking half a missile tube or the equivalent of it, putting it underneath, and then weighting down the edges and letting it set for a while. I mean, I may have to do that because it can't go in like this. And I checked the other 2 submarines, and one was warped just like this, and the other one was a little straighter, but it was wavy. And the waviness just couldn't be fixed. I hadn't noticed that before. I saw these big circles. These are just mold flaws, okay? And I'm just going to leave them. I can't really do anything much about them. Right here in the front, There's one there that really shouldn't be there. I'm going to take a second, since I noticed it. It's already been primed, but this is a fairly small spot. I really don't want it to be there. So that's good. Okay. Moving along here. Next time on Sub Wednesday, I'll be painting the top side. This is where the missiles all sit. This gets painted light gray. The bottom is dark gray. That's what I painted today. I'm going to start, the bottom of this is painted light gray. That will be straightforward. I might just go ahead and do that. Okay, do that before I paint the top. This will be dry. So before I put this third coat on here, because it might rub off a little bit, I'm going to paint this the light gray. Take care of that. This whole thing gets painted light gray on the bottom, and on the top, light gray, except for all these things that need to be yellow, and I need to figure out how to do that. These bulkheads, this one's done, but these have other sides, okay? And this other side faces the missile control room, and most of it is painted light blue. That gets painted gray, but all the detail on the control panel needs to be done. Up here, this is painted dark gray. Okay, up on top here, that's just the very, very top gangway across the top of the missile room. And light blue, and then there's this really cool clock here that I'll have to paint. I don't know what that is. I'll have to make up a color for it. This one's kind of interesting. This side faces the reactor room, but this side faces all the machinery, where the steam comes up through this hole through a pipe from the reactor. And then there's like four sections of the ship that are all filled with just machinery painted this kind of bone white stuff, where the steam is turned into motion. But there's detail on here that's kind of, difficult. It's like there's a ladder, there's this thing here with all sorts of tools on it. These things, I have no clue what those are. And the color chart doesn't give me any idea what color to paint them either, so I don't know. I'll have to make something up. Yeah, so painting this side of this bulkhead is going to take some time. This side was very easy, but it can't go in like this until this is painted. Yeah, so there's going to be stuff like that. Oh, I forgot. One more thing, totally forgot. There's a door handle on this hatch, and I wanted to make that red also. That just in time. I'll be wrapping up Sub Wednesday here, and I will be back Friday at more or less 10 until more or less 2, at which time I will be painting some sort of minifig for our Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And I hope that if you joined today, that you'll also join in on Friday. And then on Friday, I'll fill you in on the schedule as much as I can know what it will be for the next couple of weeks, when there is some family things and some travel. But thank you all. See you on Friday at more or less 10, and hopefully you will have the opportunity to become a follower, maybe become a sponsor on YouTube, maybe even go to patreon.com/diceanddungeons, and you can become a patron and support Dice and Dungeons. It's in endeavors. Well, we should just let that stay like that until the paint dries. I'll come down later today and clean that up. So thanks again, and hope to see you soon. Bye.